Well, it's a pleasure to have these two people with me as we talk about agricultural policy. Sarah Wyant is the publisher of Agri-Pulse, and Stewart Doan is the senior editor. Both of them have a long career in agriculture and a keen interest and real passion for what's going on in agricultural policy. So I'm not going to look at you folks anymore. I want to look at you guys and talk about what you think. And Sarah, to start with you, this Congress, I never dreamed we would have one quite like what it is. What's your reaction to so many new people and this idealism and conservative nature they're expressing?
Well, as a tax-paying citizen and president of a small business, I think it's terrific that we've got this kind of energy and enthusiasm for our public to be so involved in the political process. You've seen a great participation, and as a result of that, you saw a change in the Congress. And certainly that's reflective of, I think, the mood in the country right now, which is very different. There's a concern about the federal debt. People do not want this country to end up like Greece, and so they voted with quite a bit of passion for changing the way that we are making investments in this country.
Stewart, you're from Arkansas, and you saw a huge change. They booted Ms. Lincoln. You've even got a foreign broadcaster as a congressman from Arkansas to show you how low they will truly go to find people. Your reaction to the changes in Congress?
Well, in the South, there are very few blue dog Democrats anymore, and I think in large part that is because of the very controversial issues that Ms. Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, forced those Democrats to vote on. Health care, cap and trade, those are very unpopular issues with the majority of Southerners, and blue dogs, Democrats, those fiscally conservative Democrats, really had to make some tough choices. In some cases, the choices that they made the right choices, but they waffled on getting there. This election was more, at least in the South, was more about sending a message to the national Democratic leadership in the Congress than it was voting particular members of Congress out. They just happened to be the ones who took the arrows, so to speak. The Democratic Party in the South probably has been set back at least 20 years. All you've got, and Arkansas was the last southern state to really catch this wave. This began in 1980 in Alabama and Mississippi, and Arkansas was the last to the party, but when we finally got there, we really enjoyed ourselves in terms of switching the party dynamics.
I'll give you a good example of that. Just north of Arkansas, the 4th District of Missouri was, the seat was held by Ike Skelton for decades, and really beloved man, a conservative blue dog Democrat, but he voted for the climate change, the cap and trade bill, and for the first time, Missouri Farm Bureau, which has always nominated a lot of folks who support their policies, turned against him and voted for Vicki Hartzler, who's the new freshman member from that district. And from a farm, very conservative, but rode that wave of unrest against a lot of those votes.
One more note on that. In northeast Arkansas, the 1st Congressional District, it's the largest rice growing district in the United States, that seat had been in Democratic hands since the Civil War.
Wow, what change?
The farm broadcaster you spoke of earlier,
yeah.
That's that district.
Well, now let's take these people that are new. In many cases, and Sarah, in your publication, you clearly stated most of them don't have any background in government at all.
Well, Vicki Hartzler, as an example, the congressman came up through the state legislature, and some do have state legislative experience. But, you know, there's also others who have just had business backgrounds. Bobby Schilling in Illinois owns a pizza restaurant. But even Congressman Cardoza from California made a comment not too long ago, and again, a conservative blue dog Democrat. He said, you know, what we need around here is not so much the Republicans versus Democrats, but a lot more people who have signed the front side of a paycheck. And I do think you see a lot of that with these new freshman members.
Now, what is going to be the measuring stick for these people? I mean, they're coming in very idealistic. They're clearly, as the Republicans stating, we are going to cut spending, and they also seem to want to get rid of President Obama. But at the end of 2 years, what's going to be the accountability that they have back to the voter Because in most cases, in the second year of your term, it seems like you send money to people because people tend to vote for the last person that sent money to them. That's exactly the opposite of what they say they're going to do.
When we ask members of Congress, the new ones, what are your marching orders? They almost all say, I was told on the campaign trail, repeal health care, number one. Number two, get the EPA off my back. The perception is there, right or wrong, that the Environmental Protection Agency is, to coin a phrase, out of control. And those two things, more than any other, I have heard from new members of Congress. We don't like the health care. We expect you to chip away at it, if not fully repeal it, number one. And number two, do something about that EPA.
Sarah, what do you think the measuring stick's going to be for them, whether they get voted back in 2 years?
Well, Stewart brought up two very good and very broad-based issues that are of concern. But many of the members I've talked to were elected to with the expectation that they would cut spending. Now, as you know, it's always easier to cut spending except on my favorite program or your favorite program. So the proof will be in the pudding on how that is reflected in the voter angst or appreciation come 2 years from now. But I think almost all of them, at least on the GOP side, and even some of the conservatives, the small number that were elected on the Democratic side, believe that we need to get our fiscal house in order. There's a difference in approach, but I think the common feel is we do need to make some cuts.
Well, now, there's no politically proper way to say this, but are there some that are martyrs or kamikazes, and they don't care if they get reelected or not as long as they get their point across?
Oh, I think you always have a few members who believe that they don't need to run for re-election as long as they've done their job. I mean, we even saw Kent Conrad, who is stepping down this year as a senator from North Dakota, say that he wasn't going to continue to run for re-election unless he got the nation's fiscal house in order. And I mean, it's going to be a great opportunity for him this year, not running for re-election in 2012, to be able to play a major role as chairman of the Senate Budget Committee. But for the most part, I think these are folks who really want to continue to demonstrate some leadership, and they're going to let the chips fall where they may.
I would say that at some point, reality is going to hit these new, ambitious, optimistic, aggressive,
idealistic.
That's another good word to use, lawmakers, that you can, cut around the edges, you can cut this social program or that social program, but until you deal with the real causes, the real issues that run up the federal budget price tag or the federal deficit price tag, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that's when reality will hit these people. Oh gosh, that's when a decision will have to be made. We've always said we can't touch those. How serious am I, or how committed am I going to be about addressing the deficit and doing what I told my constituents if I don't want to cut these things?
Well, if you start taking money out of the mouths of babes, it becomes a much different political environment. But at the same time, I think you also need to keep in mind a lot of these folks are from states that are facing the same kinds of fiscal crises, albeit at a smaller level, than we are on the national level. Look what's happening in so many states around the country, Wisconsin, Illinois. There's all sorts of budget problems emanating within the states, and so they're going to be seen on the state house level. They're going to have constituents very aware of the need to cut the federal deficit. So I think that's going to be a driving force in the background.
Is it necessary for them to also take down President Obama, or do you think they can just focus on budget issues and let that next election fall where it may?
Well, I think that you're seeing already a lot of President Obama taking a tactic from President Clinton, moving a little bit more to the center, becoming more of a deal maker. You saw that with the tax package at the end of December. And sometimes divided houses or divided areas of government work very well to get things done, as Clinton did after the shellacking he had in 93, 94.
Final area. Go ahead. Do you have anything on that?
Strategy is for House Republicans to probably pass a lot of things the next 2 years, and the onus will be on the Senate They'll either pass them or they won't, and the Republicans will have an election issue in 2012 by which they hope will lead to success in taking control of the Senate.
Okay, I can't resist this. Then did we just begin a 6-year cycle? And the 6-year cycle winds up with more of these same people arriving in 2012 and some more in 2014 and changing the whole mood of that Congress.
Well, it depends on how everything plays out, I guess, as you look at the big picture. But you're already seeing a lot of Democratic senators who have decided to retire rather than run for re-election. A lot more Democrats this cycle on the Senate side are up versus last cycle where there were more Republicans. You know, again, a different dynamic if you have GOP control of the Senate and the House versus a Democratic president. But I think President Obama still has a lot of momentum out there, and I wouldn't cut him short right now in any way.
Final thing, and that is the manifestation for agriculture, it appears, on all of this is going to be the next farm bill and the amount of money that would be available, the amount of spending that would actually be accomplished. Do you feel like this will, without a doubt, be a very austere farm bill in 2012?
Yes. Absolutely. You know, we already have 37, 38 programs that are expiring, like the Standing Disaster Program. They're expiring this year with no baseline. So just to get us back to being even whole, we'd have to come up with 8 to 10 more billions of dollars to make those programs continue. So you've got that situation going on. You've got all the pressure that's coming from the budget. You saw cuts already coming like crazy on this appropriations measure last week. So definitely it's going to be more austere.
And there are only 2 pots of money, really, which Farm Bill writers can go to fund other programs in this Title I and the safety net programs, and that's direct payments, roughly $5 billion a year, and then you have the crop insurance money. And other than that, there really isn't anywhere else to go for money.
Could the Farm Bill in 2012 just be almost irrelevant as far as the incentives it would offer farmers?
Well, it depends on incentives for what. I mean, I still think that there's going to be some good things for conservation. Crop insurance is a very important tool right now, given the volatility we have in our markets. So there are a lot of different things in the risk management portfolio and in conservation that could still be very key. But with record farm prices right now, you think, well, maybe those aren't as important. But we all know that this business is extremely cyclical. What goes up usually goes down, and so we have to look at what kind of environment we're going to be facing 5 years from now.
Stewart, any observations here of what you're seeing as far as this 2012 bill for Southerners, for some of these Southern crops that seem to be very, very protectionist of what they have right now?
Southerners, more than any time in my experience, are doing lots of studies about how to improve crop insurance. They're even contracting with some universities to look at acre and how you might improve it to where more Southern growers would find it enticing. They're hanging with direct payments. If there is one thing that the Southern commodities feel like is their safety net, the only thing that they feel like they benefit from today is the direct payment. And beyond that, they do acknowledge the budget situation and the difficulties it will face. They are, as I indicated, the rice industry is working with RMA on new crop insurance products. So is cotton. In fact, I ran into a rice grower recently who's been involved with RMA who made the comment publicly, and he probably should not have said this publicly, but we feel like that crop insurance will become our safety net in the future. And that reality, given our budget challenge, is starting to set in the South.
Well, the two of you work every week to publish Agri-Pulse, and in this era of changing media uptake, to me, it is a one piece, and I really mean this, that will give you as straight a shot of what's really going on as anything out there. And I'm wondering if you are going to find you can keep that pace in this next couple of years with all the things that are going on.
Well, we've decided that we're going to clone ourselves. We haven't quite figured out how yet, but we're working on it.
Well, you do a nice job, and Stewart, from your perspective, you also do some audio work as well you make available each week. So thank you very much as a senior editor and publisher of Agri-Pulse for speaking with us.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.